Oh, during the break when we talk about 3D printers and the future of manufacturing in the United States. I'm sorry. It makes it's as recovering white trash. That's one of my favorite side projects. Those of you that don't know, grew up in Peeks Mill, Kentucky. One road, 46 people. Elementary school, little store that rents canoes and also sells bait, right? And we used to get pickled sausages in a jar, and instead of Purell in town, like everybody else uses Purell, you just after church you just stick your hand in that stuff, and it had so many spices in it, it would just burn and kill anything that was on your hand. That was how you cleaned your hand after shaking hands with all the strangers. And we had our little church and our little graveyard, and two little bridges that brought you in and out, and that was it. That's it. That's the whole place. And we had a family. I will not name them because there are descendants of theirs that are still in the area that are straight out of sort of a mid-70s version of Deliverance that lived up the hill from us. Some of their siblings went to school with me. They are reasons why we had to cover our classroom in anti-lice powder a couple of times. Why they had to sit in the hallway, impoverished lice.
Yeah, when I lived in Maryland, we had a couple of lice kids.
Mm-hmm. And I grew up, they lived up in a hill in a trailer with no electricity. And if some point somebody from the federal government during the Reagan years had come to them and said, I'm from the federal government and I'm here to help you, that whole family might have avoided a lot of heartache and sorrow as they entered into addiction, and eventually half the family was wiped out by the opioid problem. So, we'll talk. That's a whole other thing to unpack. But again, another reason why they fear the budget is because it's for Americans. And they're afraid that their voters will get a whiff of this and they'll like it. They'll like functioning government. Maybe, just maybe, the average American does not want their government to be able to be drowned in a bathtub, because they know that Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping and any number and the Ayatollah and any number of marauding groups across the globe would love to take turns dunking the American government.
Yeah.
Right now, we have a cybersecurity arm in the government that can be drowned in a bathtub, thanks to Trump firing the head of CISA because he didn't agree with him that the election was stolen, and undermining it entirely because he thought going after the Russians.
He was benefiting from it.
Yes, because going after the Russians and what they were doing to our country, he took as a personal attack. And you know why he took it as a personal attack? Because he's a liar and a crook, and he was colluding with Russia, and all of that panned out. And I don't want to hear any garbage about the disputed the dossier. It wasn't dodgy at all. It was absolutely on the mark. We got another call. Who do we have first? Is it Paul? Who's up?
Paul from Seattle.
Excellent. Paul from Seattle, welcome.
Hey, Al, it's good to talk to you again. I haven't talked to you in a while.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How's life behind the chop? I understand your city burned to the ground, and that it has no functioning economy, and that you have no chief of police, and that the whole downtown area is run by Antifa now. Is that right? Masked marauders, most of them with Russian accents. Boogaloo Boys, I think, are running. They're on the city council, right? Yeah.
Does every week.
Good. Week. I'm glad it's consistent. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of a repeat. Rinse and repeat type thing. Every week it happens.
Well, you have to rotate it. It's an anarcho-syndicalist commune. They take turns picking an executive officer of the week, like Dennis Marks in the mud in Holy Grail. There's some lovely filth down here. Right? Anyways, go ahead.
Right. You're talking about where you grew up. That reminds me. I don't know if there are places like that in every state, but I was thinking as you're talking about Stehekin, Washington, which doesn't have one road. It's a landlocked little village that doesn't have. There are no roads to it.
Yes,
it can only be reached by water. It's you have to go get on a ferry at the southern end of Lake Chelan and take the ferry 50 miles up the lake to Stehekin. And on the way, there are these sort of very Deliverance-type tributary rivers that go up who knows where. A very scary type place, but it's only reachable by the Queen of the Lake ferry. And what really bugs me, and this is what gets to my point here, is I really think the Democrats at this point need to dump the brand bipartisanship and just say, no, that's a 70s thing. It's now we're keeping score of whose policies really work. And I've shared with Tom Hartman, my idea is to get rid of the federal income tax. This would make the Democrats very popular in Congress, and then start the way the federal government will collect taxes is from every state treasurer. The states are the members of the union. The states should be the ones to pay the union dues. And so whatever
you can't do that then, because then it's really hard for then it lays bare the fact that the blue states pay for the red states, that the highly populated cities that they're like awash in crime because they're also awash in coffee shops and awash in tall buildings and awash in
people
schools.
Doing jobs.
Right, are also the ones that are awash in cash that pay for the states that don't have any coffee shops, don't have any schools, and just have lots of empty, landlocked towns.
Right. Well, they would have to be. It would be interesting because I'd like to see the Republicans argue against getting rid of the IRS. I mean, this is all the things they preach. We have to start making them responsible. Because they do literally now are taking credit for things like the COVID relief bill that they've all voted against, and then not try to. That's the thing is that they turn around and this way, then it's like, okay, it's our party against yours, and you can go ahead and call us socialists. You can call us any names you want to, but that's not coming up with any policies. Just calling us names is not coming up with policies. And so you can call it a socialist. And by the way, I just want to, if Steve is still listening, because he's a professor. The one sentence definition of socialism, as I know it, is this. It is public ownership, collective ownership of productive gain and a reinvestment of some part of that gain into the collective project. So by that definition, the Green Bay Packers are a socialist football team because they're owned by the city of Green Bay.
Oh, God, yes.
And, so to the degree that they reinvest some of those profits of the team, and I'm sure they do, into the city of Green Bay, that's a socialist football team. But it's a very successful and profitable socialist football team as far as I know.
Right. Well, I would say, arguably, again, I make this argument all the time, that what we use, that's simply democratic taxation. That is the people of Green Bay over time increasingly choosing to pay with their tax dollars the ability to build a stadium, create a team, and have it be there as an investment point so that they can use the profits of that team to pay for other stuff. And so not socialism, democratic taxation. And that's what makes it very normal. And you can't have socialism itself, and the one thing that does it is you cannot have isolated socialism. You can't have socialism as a project within a greater thing. It's either the whole thing or it ain't. If it ain't, then it is simply a social program that the taxpayer has decided is a worthwhile investment that would create a better opportunity for everyone to go about being free and having businesses and being, normal. The problem with it is the definition of socialism is collapsible as the one about capitalism. The definition of capitalism was created when people were born on top of oil, coal, or gold or diamonds, or had an army that could go kill the people who were born on top of oil, coal, gold, or diamonds. And capital was based on what was in the rocks underneath your feet. Now, it could be what's in the rocks between your head, because you can have a kid who's literally a millionaire from the apps that he's able to design, requires no secondary workers, and therefore is capital, but not the traditional idea of Marxist capitalism that they were fighting against. I have a problem with all those names because they were designed, those concepts that we argue about were created when there was less than 1 billion people on Earth, and therefore are totally useless to describe our modern flourishing economy. And it's exactly why these idiots panic all the time. It's exactly why they can't deal. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me ask you this to finish up here, Al, because I know you've heard it, and maybe you mentioned it earlier today. But Matt Gaetz in his evaluation of the Second Amendment, you probably heard.
I did a whole video on it on my YouTube channel at infotainmentwars.com. People can go check it out. I broke the whole speech down, all of it. It goes up later today.
I'm just wondering I'm just wondering if the question I always have about that is okay. So who is it decides that it's time for the armed rebellion?
Right.
And by the way, Matt, aren't you part of the government we should have the armed rebellion against it?
Right.
Do you mind if we take our Second Amendments to you? You know?
Right. Well, I mean, first of all, I absolutely and unequivocally deny any use of force in a political arena, especially based on speech, period, end of story. And I would also say that Matt Gaetz is absolutely trying to activate a cell of those people in what he's saying as the coward that he is, hoping some nutcase carries out what he wants to do. And what I will say, and people can watch the whole video on my channel if they want to see me break down his whole thing. But ultimately, Matt Gaetz, as dumb as his thing is about just uprisings, and we've heard that crap before from everybody from, Ted Nugent to Jeff Sessions, this whole idea like, it's the tyrannical government. Yeah, you mean you want to kill your own soldiers and cops because they bust you for selling sawed-off shotguns. I get it. And, like, it's the revenuers, right? Taxation is theft. Clack, clack. That's the whole nonsense. But you have to understand that not only does he argue that the Second Amendment is solely for you to fight your own tyrannical government. That's his argument. But that guns for hunting, recreation, and sport are, wait for it, not covered by the Second Amendment.
All right.
Therefore, the government, if you
remember John Kennedy Toole, he called it a time for a Moorish uprising. You remember that part of the book?
Oh, good Lord. Yeah. Hee-hoo. I mean,
Pew, pew.
Yeah, Kennedy needs, he needs to be a Disney character in in one of the old cartoons they don't play anymore. We got to take a break. Thanks for calling in, Paul. I appreciate it. And good luck with your meeting with the, is it an Antifa BLM mayor that you have now? I know you can't tell what race or what their gender is because they wear all black and they have to wear a hood. Yeah, I know. I just talked to him anyways because it's a break. It's fine. But over the course of he'll send pictures. Although I think there no cameras allowed. I think that's the rule in Washington Stan, the new Red Republic of Seattle Ostov. Is that what they're calling it now? Oh, Starbucks. We'll be back.